Okay, let's dive in. June 12th, 2025, a flight takes off, Air India AI171, and then almost immediately, something goes terribly wrong.
Terribly wrong is almost an understatement. We're talking seconds after wheels up.
Right. An aircraft full of people, just moments into its flight, it fails to climb and crashes right into a populated area. It's shocking.
It really is.
Our mission today for this deep dive is to really unpack what happened with Flight AI171 using the sources you've shared. It's a recent, devastating event, and the speed, it's almost unbelievable.
Absolutely. And this incident, it's not just another tragic crash. It immediately makes everyone in aviation stop and think. It raises some really critical questions about modern air safety.
Questions we thought might have been settled.
Exactly. About the technology we rely on and what happens when, against all odds, it fails so spectacularly.
So let's get into the specifics, the timeline. What exactly happened in those first moments?
Okay, so the date was June 12th, 2025.
Right.
The aircraft, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, Air India Flight AI171.
And the route.
Scheduled from Ahmedabad International Airport to London Gatwick, a standard long-haul flight.
But it never got close. You said seconds.
Just 28 seconds after takeoff. That's the critical number here, 28 seconds.
Wow. And it never got above. What was the altitude?
It failed to gain altitude beyond 600 feet. Just incredibly low.
And then?
Then it nosedived, straight down into the BJ Medical College Boys Hostel.
Which is close to the airport.
Very close. Only about 3 kilometers from the runway and right in a densely populated area.
The impact must have been horrific.
Instantaneous and catastrophic. The sources say the jet exploded on impact. A massive fireball just engulfed the building.
And the loss of life on the plane.
Everyone on board, all 241 people, that was 230 passengers and 11 crew members, all died instantly.
Oh my God. But it didn't end there, did it? Because it hit the hostel.
No, it didn't. Tragically, 38 residents of the hostel, mostly students we understand, were also killed.
So that brings the total to?
A staggering 279 lives lost in less than half a minute from takeoff.
It's almost impossible to process those numbers, that speed. But then, amidst all that devastation, there's this one detail that just stands out.
The survivor.
The sole survivor. One person out of 279. How?
Well, his name is Vishwash Kumar Ramesh. He's 29, a British Indian businessman.
And where was he sitting? Does that matter?
Apparently, yes. He was seated near an emergency exit. That seems to be a key factor.
And there's footage.
Yeah, CCTV footage actually shows him staggering away from the burning wreckage, bleeding, clearly disoriented, but alive. It's remarkable.
Just unbelievable. What's his condition now?
He's being treated in a private hospital there in Ahmedabad, listed as stable, thankfully.
And the theories.
Yeah.
How did he survive that?
Well, experts are looking at a combination of things. His seat location near the exit definitely played a part. Maybe his physical fitness helped.
Right.
And then just incredible luck. A statistical anomaly, really.
A miracle, basically.
You could call it that. I mean, surviving an impact, an explosion like that,
Yeah.
The odds are virtually zero. For anyone to walk away is, well, defies explanation in many ways.
It really does. It just underscores the randomness, maybe, amidst the horror.
It does. And it makes the search for answers for why this happened even more urgent.
Right. Which takes us to the investigation. What went wrong? What are the initial findings? They found the recorders, I assume.
Yes, thankfully. Both the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorded the black boxes were recovered from the wreckage. That's crucial.
And what are they saying so far? I know it's early days.
Very early.
Mm-hmm.
But the preliminary data seem to point towards something extremely rare. A dual engine failure. Both engines failing almost simultaneously.
Both engines? How?
The suspicion is possibly a major electrical or hydraulic fault that cascaded somehow. It wasn't just the engines themselves, likely something systemic.
And there's other evidence pointing that way.
Yes, a really critical piece. The deployment of the ram air turbine, the RAT.
The RAT. Explain what that is, what that signifies.
Okay, so the RAT is essentially a small wind turbine that drops out of the plane, usually from the wing or a fuselage. It's an absolute last resort backup system.
Last resort for what?
For electrical and hydraulic power. If the plane loses all main engine power and its auxiliary power unit, the RAT deploys automatically, driven by the airflow, to provide just enough power for essential flight controls.
So the fact that it deployed tells us.
It tells us the aircraft had lost major systems. It confirms a catastrophic power failure scenario in flight, well beyond just the engines flaming out. It's a huge clue.
Wow. Okay. So who's actually digging into all this data?
It's a major international effort, as you'd expect. Officials from India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, the AAIB, were leading it.
But with help.
Absolutely. They're working closely with experts from the UK's AAIB, the US NTSB, and crucially with Boeing, the manufacturer.
Makes sense. Everyone needs answers here. Is there a timeline for when we might know more?
They're aiming for a preliminary report within 90 days. But, determining the exact root cause,
Yeah.
that's complex. It takes time. It's not just looking at one part. It's piecing together a whole chain of events.
Yeah, you don't want to rush that. Getting it right is paramount.
Exactly. Prevention is the ultimate goal.
So while the investigation gets underway, what's been the immediate reaction? From the airline, from the public?
Air India's chairman, N. Chandrasekaran, made a statement pretty quickly, called it heartbreaking, which it obviously is, and pledged a full safety audit of the airline.
And what about their other 787s? Are they still flying?
No, they've grounded them for now. All Boeing 787s in Air India's fleet are undergoing emergency inspections as a precaution.
That seems prudent. And support for the victims?
Yes, the airline has offered compensation to the families of those lost on the flight and also support for the survivors from the hostile impact.
And the public response? This must have hit hard.
Immensely hard. There's been widespread grief. Candlelight vigils were held not just in India, Ahmedabad, Delhi, Mumbai, but also abroad, in London, given the flight's destination.
I imagine social media was.
Flooded. Tributes, condolences, shock. Many people calling it the darkest day in Indian aviation in over a decade.
And there's a particular significance to this crash involving this specific aircraft type, isn't there?
Yes, there is, and it's a huge factor in the global attention. This is the first ever fatal crash involving a Boeing 787 Dreamliner.
The very first, since it started flying.
Since it entered service back in 2009, this aircraft was hailed as, the next generation, super efficient, technologically advanced.
So this happening to a Dreamliner.
It sends ripples through the entire industry.
Right.
It puts that technology, that design, under an intense microscope. So yes, India grieves, the world watches, and everyone is waiting for answers.
It's just such a stark contrast, isn't it? This incredibly advanced machine, this catastrophic, rapid failure, the huge loss of life, and then one single person walks away.
That contrast is precisely what makes this so compelling and so tragic. Yeah. The sheer scale of the loss against the backdrop of that one unlikely survival.
Leaving so many questions still hanging in the air.
Absolutely. And maybe that's the final thought to leave people with as the investigation continues. We live in this era of incredibly advanced aviation, safety systems upon safety systems, redundancy built in everywhere. So how do we reconcile that sophistication, that presumed safety, with the devastating speed of a catastrophe like this? And how do we balance that suddenness with the slow, careful, deliberate pace needed to truly understand why it happened and, crucially, how to stop it from ever happening again?